Yeah, well, I'm a serial entrepreneur, now dedicating my life to a very specific mission, which is helping people unleash their potential through science and ancient wisdom. I'm a bridger, so what I do is that I'm merging these two worlds, which is the ancient traditions and the latest science. They're all saying the same thing. We're just using different languages. And we all want the same thing, which is happiness and being liberated by our trauma. As any other entrepreneur out there, I had a pretty similar journey, which is I'm a neurodiverse founder. I'm ADHD, and these 3 out of 4 people that are founders, that are entrepreneurs, are actually neurodiverse. This neurodiversity brought me to being the black sheep among my kids and friends and family at the beginning, and then later on as a founder. You know, the usual story of trying to build something to prove someone else that you're worthy. This is the trauma that I was carrying around, and then until I didn't work on this trauma, I never really achieved the actual successful goals that I set for myself externally. And then now what I'm doing, I'm building Whole Grain Wisdom, which is the first space that truly understands founders, which basically means we are a media company, an event company. We do talk about all of this that I also come out as a guest and share, which is the fact that we are neurodiverse, and the hustle culture and all of the narrative around the workaholism of entrepreneurs is actually a way to chase external validation rather than actually fulfilling our internal goals. And until we don't really unleash the trauma that we have in our body, which comes from different ways and different reasons, mostly primarily from childhood, we are gonna keep stuck in a pattern of certain events, certain unpleasant things that recurrently happen in our life. And so until we don't really release that, that's gonna be kind of like our curse. I like to say that the neurodiversity and in general, like the drive of entrepreneurs is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because we're able to see the world with different eyes. We are able to take risks that nobody else has the courage to take. But at the same time, it traps us. And if we don't know how to work with this energy, we're going to be stuck for our life.
Okay. I love all of that. And there's a couple of questions I want to ask you about a number of those things. So this is great. I would love to just jump right in, actually.
Yep.
So I'm probably going to spend a little bit of time editing, but I'm hoping I can ask some intelligent enough questions that I learn something and I can unlock some of the information that you've got so that it's simple and easy for people to understand. Because my hope is that with this podcast, I started it just this year, and not professional, not any real business goal other than I wanted to try and see if I could do 50 podcasts in a year. That was really it. And I knew some people that I thought would be cool to have on, but as I've been getting pitched by people more and more, the type of people that I end up having on my show and the type of people that pitch me are more like coaches and mindset people and therapists and folks that spend all their life helping other people deal with their past and working on their future. And so I've talked to a lot of people that have a lot of different ways of doing that. And it's cool because there's a lot of ways to explain the same exact process. of how we go from being in a stuck loop to being able to see the fact that we're in a stuck loop. And then now that we see it and acknowledge it, figuring out the best way to use it and grow from it and move out of the loop and fulfill our ultimate potential. And I feel like you probably can resonate with that process. You likely have language and tactics and strategies and therapies and modalities and things you've discovered on the breakthrough or the breakout or whatever you want to call it. So I actually first want to really start back with what I think is sort of the beginning of the story, which is ADHD. That may or may not be the real actual beginning of your story, but it seemed like that was an important piece of knowledge for you. So if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. To be fairly honest, my knowledge about ADHD came very recently when I actually started. So I'll tell you what happened just now, let's say kind of recently, and then I go back to where my story starts. 1 year ago, I left my previous company, my previous venture. I got to a point where I couldn't continue anymore with my co-founder, with my venture. I will share more on other stories next, and it will be clear why I left. But mostly from there, I started to. I wanted to take a gap year. I actually left with my wife Italy. We became nomads. We are in Southeast Asia since last November. So we completely changed our life. It was an inevitable next step for our trajectory, but in general, I started digging deeper into the problem of mental health for entrepreneurs because I had so much problems myself, and I really was curious to understand, okay, am I the only one with this issue, or is there something more here that nobody's really sharing as a full story? And so that's really when I started to dig into the neurodiversity and all of the statistics and all of the surveys. There is knowledge out there. It's pretty comprehensive, but nobody talks about it. So my very first goal is to talk about it, like to share and to shine light about these issues. Because if 3 out of 4 entrepreneurs are neurodiverse, this is more than the majority, and nobody talks about it. So that's when I discovered, okay, if you really want to use the term, then I have ADHD, because if I look at all the symptoms, let's say if I do kind of like a self-diagnosis, then I fit in. Oh, finally, that's somewhere where I could fit in, right? But I've never considered myself nobody. Even when I was a kid, my mother never brought me to a therapist.
Okay.
Because they were afraid that if I started therapy, I would feel even more of a black sheep, and I would be even more labeled into this, you're weird or you have a problem. In Italy, I don't know, in the US or where you're from, how was it 20 years ago? But, just only recently after COVID in Italy, people started to publicly say they're going to therapy. Before then, we're talking about 2020, nobody talked about it. Like if you went to a therapist, you were sick. So I never done all of that. I had to go all my life to figure it out by myself. And the way that I figured it out, and now I can tell you a little bit about my story and the kind of like the journey, is that when I founded my first company was when I was 19, during bachelor. And I didn't know anything what I was doing about. I just knew that the quantity of work that I was putting into this venture, plus university, because I'm Italian, so I was not allowed to drop off from school, from a university, not like in the US. And so the amount of work was the only way for my brain to not think too much about myself, like to not be stuck in my head so much, because I was putting so much energy into work. And that became for me the only way that I could actually cope with whatever it was going on in my head. If I was not working, so many thoughts would go on in my head that I couldn't literally even go to sleep. But if I was so workaholic, so destroyed by working so many hours, then I was just hitting the bed and, falling asleep immediately. So that was kind of like a coping mechanism to work so much for me. And until the point that unfortunately it started to become a real problem, because in my second venture, I was getting so many panic attacks that every single lunch break, when everybody in the co-working space was having lunch, I was closing myself into what we call the panic room, which was kind of like an insulated meeting room where nobody could hear from the outside. And I fortunately managed to find a breathing meditation on Spotify. And I started to do these exercises because that was the only way for me to actually like lower the stress, lower the anxiety, lower these panic attacks. Fortunately, after 6 months of this method, I literally never had any single panic attack in my life ever again. So from there something clicked in me, because I started to do something somatic. Afterwards, I understood even the category of this kind of methods, like somatic work and breath work and so on. Immune regulation. You can use all sorts of terms. I didn't know at the time. But what I knew is that thing worked. And so the next thing that I did was, okay, for some reason, I associated the guided breathing exercise with meditation. So I asked myself, okay, who the heck knows how to meditate? I know that this thing can actually work. And I immediately thought about Buddhists, monks. And I went on Google and I looked for a Buddhist center in Milan, in Italy, where I was living. And that's when I started to get into the Eastern world and Eastern philosophies of life, because I actually got into a Buddhist school, a beautiful center with thousands and thousands of people around the world. And I felt immediately home. These people were super welcoming, super genuine. And I started learning more and more about the Eastern philosophy and more about meditation. And I did Buddhist meditation since then. It's more than 8 years. And so that was kind of like the first bubble that I describe of my journey, which is the mind bubble. So the mental health. Through meditation, through breath work, I was able to re-regulate my body so that I could actually stop the panic attacks and in general, like detach a little bit from these so many thoughts in my head and start to look a little bit the bigger picture.
Okay. Can I ask a question or two here?
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with mental health, by the way, but it really kind of stood out to me when you mentioned the interesting point about education, actually. It sounded like it's a very strong cultural thing in Italy to go from high school straight into university. Is that like expected, or is it more of like a rule or a law?
I believe it's really a combination of many things. I grew up in a family that valued really, really highly a certificate, degree, a piece of paper, how we say it in Italian.
Yeah.
Because that was the way that my grandparents, that were absolutely poor even less than working class. My grandmother was a housewoman. How do you say it? And then my grandfather was actually working multiple jobs just to make a living. And they saved every single cent to send my mother to university. So, for them, this is still at the time like a sign that you're going up a step in the social ladder. And they thought that was exactly the same today. But of course, it's slightly different than how it was 50 years ago.
So are your grandparents then, were they born and raised in Italy?
Yeah. I'm in this specific case, the one I'm referring to, they're from Sardinia, the island in Italy, in a beautiful place.
How far back does your ancestry go in Italy, if I might ask?
So I think a lot, but to be really honest, it's something that interests me as a topic, but I never really took the time to go deep enough. So I don't really know anyone except from my great grandmother, which I actually knew and spent a lot of time with because she died at 101. She was coming from the blue zones of Sardinia. It's a very famous area where longevity and people are like living 100+ years as an average.
That's cool. My culture being, so I live in the United States for sure, and I live in the state of Utah. Mm-hmm. And there's a major religion here called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Some people call us Mormons. Mm-hmm. But we are very well known. We're probably the most well known for our work in genealogy and family history. Is a major focus of our religion. And so I've spent a lot of time researching my ancestors and thinking about ancestry and where people come from and origins and DNA and all of that stuff. So it always kind of fascinates me how other people kind of perceive their family history. And I don't know if you've studied this concept much, but there's something called generational trauma.
Yep.
So that's another reason why it's, I think, critical to understand your family history and look at the circumstances that your ancestors lived in and the things that they experienced because of those scenarios and the trauma that they had to go through, and it carries through generations.
Yep.
So, in my family history, education has also been very important. But I was homeschooled, and I don't know if that's a very big thing over in Italy, but
nowadays I believe it's becoming definitely more popular, not in Italy per se, but as a nomad myself, I definitely see this as a big thing for my future kids.
Yeah. We didn't homeschool our kids. So I've got a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old. And they both went through the public school system. But I was homeschooled for most of my kindergarten through 12th grade years. And I count that as a huge blessing and sort of a superpower. And, just the experiences that we have as entrepreneurs with our education. It's, of all the people I've interviewed, most of them, if they're entrepreneurs, they are very pro education, but they don't care about the piece of paper. It's the knowledge and the application of knowledge. That's the important part. And you can get that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm studying constantly myself. I'm reinventing myself every day. And to be really honest, I don't think, this is probably another big conversation, what I think about education today and so on. But what I can tell you, as per my experience and my own story, I went back into understanding since when did I really become like an angry, active, stressed child? and everything comes back to two major events. One is getting to school, elementary school. For the first time, I was a super active child. And since the time that I had to be forced to sit down on a table, on a chair, in a physical space with four walls and a roof and so on, that's when my stress levels really went through crazy levels. And the other time was when my dad moved to another place for work, and he was coming back either every night or every weekend. And so these were two major events that really made me, okay, there's something that shocked me there. And I was fortunate enough to go back in past through, heal all that trauma, work through all of those steps. So, I mean, nowadays I share them as stories, anecdotes for the steps that I had to take. But everybody has their own things, to be honest.
Well, yeah. And that's probably one of the biggest things that doesn't seem logical to most people who haven't done therapy, is going back to those past experiences and using them for what they were meant to do, which was to teach us.
Oh, yeah, of course. But that's a level of understanding that you reach with a lot of wisdom.
Yes,
when you understand that shit comes not to you, but for you, then you really are into another level.
Right. And that takes a lot of hard work. And most people aren't used to putting in that level of hard work in their mental practice. I know a lot of people who are really good at physically working out and putting a lot of effort into the physical work that it takes to make it through life. We call them a gym rat here in the United States, but I go to the gym 6 days a week and I get in and out. I'm not there to chit chat, but that's something I do to make sure that my mind and my body are both being worked out and just trying to improve them, because the mind is a muscle just like your body. And when you're using them both in concert with each other and helping them be more in tune, there's a lot of positive benefits to that. Yeah,
definitely. The model that I teach, that I share on Wholegrain Wisdom, is that at the most fundamental level, we are a salt-water battery. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of the fascial system and how it's composed. It's basically collagen and minerals and water passing through. And the collagen...
Fascia?
Fascia, yes.
Like your skin and your muscles, connectivity?
Yeah, so actually, skin is something else. It can be considered an organ per se. The muscles are also something else, which is actually the power source to move your actual body. But everything is kind of like wrapped together through the fascial system. The fascial system is mostly collagen, water, and minerals, salts. And this, in quantum biology, in the deepest understanding of how the body works, is actually the transmitter of energy through the body. If you go back into the ancient wisdom, you're talking about, the chakra points and how the energy from the universe in the top of your head and your crown, it goes and passes through your body, and then it builds basically like an electromagnetic torus through you, which is like your EMF field, your biofield. So the actual fascia is the one that conveys all of this energy, all of these signals, which is even different than the actual the nerves of your body, which are actually transmitting electricity and chemicals. In the fascia, you literally just have a flow of energy, which we can call whatever. You can, in some cultures, they call it prana, chi, the life energy. So we are a saltwater battery because if we do have, we store energy in this way, we let the energy flow through our body. Water it has been found that in our body, in biological tissues, is not in the liquid form. It's actually in a fourth phase, which is called exclusion zone. It's kind of like a gel situation, and that the molecules are not even H2O anymore. They are H3O2. So basically they're building an hexagonal frame of molecules of water, and this hexagonal frame holds certain information through the energy that flows. And if you have trauma, you have trapped information, trapped knots of this electromagnetic frequency through your body, through the fascia. And when the energy flows, they get basically stuck through the different knots of your trauma in your body. And that's what doesn't allow you to go further, like doesn't allow you to get rid of these negative patterns in your life and so on and so forth. But getting rid of them is actually much less in your mind as we used to think from a traditional therapeutical point of view, but so much more into the actual body experience of yourself.
And is that something that you have created a system for going through?
So let's be very clear. All the systems are already out there, okay? Like nobody's really inventing anything. What we are doing, and people like me is doing, is that because I'm a bridger, I told you at the beginning, my mission is to merge science and ancient wisdom. I am connecting the dots. So what I'm doing at Holgren Wisdom is that I'm making sense of all the things that are apparently being told in very different ways and very different narratives and languages. And I'm just doing my best to create a coherent narrative to make people understand that it's really just one thing. And from there, part of Holgren Wisdom is, as I told you, is an event company. So what I do is that I organize funders-only retreats around the world, where in 1 week we go deep down into working with funders in a safe space where everybody is like very vulnerable, and we can work together with this energy of funders together. And we go through 6 steps that allows you to kind of like map and understand what are your trapped traumas, what are your recurrent patterns that you always end up, in those situations. And then from there, what is your energy profile? Because that's another big important thing, is to understand, okay, how do you normally work with these energies? Like, why did you come here in this life to do and to work with what energies? How can you best bring them from a negative kind of point of view to a positive point of view, that energies that work for you, not against you? And then from there we build, we release all of these trap emotions. And then the very last step is to build a new routine system that is aligned with your energy profile. And from there, you can just go on and thrive in your life, ideally. One of the reason why I would like to highlight the fact that building routines is a very important step of our life. And 90% of what we do every single day is a product of our unconscious mind. So we're not even aware that we're doing certain things. So all of our belief system is there, and it's the one that makes us do 90% of the actions every single day. So if you don't change your belief system, you don't change your life, basically. But the problem is that right now, everybody talks about building routines as there is one recipe for everyone. But the problem is that we are all different people, and we all have different energy profiles, different personalities, the different traumas that we have to work with, different energies, right? So until you don't really understand what energy profile you are, then it's very difficult to build a routine for you instead of something that everybody does but is not really tailored for yourself. It's kind of like the example of having a diet that is personalized to your genome, to your DNA, to your like blood type, whatever, rather than just somebody telling you, everybody should eat X, Y, Z because that's how I do it. Yeah, but I'm different than you, so it shouldn't be the same.
Yep. That makes sense. And I've been through plenty of different types of therapies myself. My wife is actually a therapist, and I'm a recovering addict, so I've been through 12 steps. So there's a lot of similarities between customizing the program for each person based on how we all learn and grow and respond to things, because everybody learns differently. Everybody is motivated by different things. We all have such unique strengths and weaknesses and experiences. Yeah, there's no one size fits all by any means. And I do want to, I would love to keep talking about this, but I try and keep each of my episodes to about 25, 30 minutes, and we're pretty much there. By the way, I love your accent, and I think it's so cool. Do you speak any other languages besides Italian and English?
I speak French and Spanish as well.
Oh, very, very cool. I only speak English. I'm impressed. It's not an easy thing for me to pick up a language, but we're different. We have our own strengths and weaknesses, and so I respect you for taking on those new languages. So much respect. But before we disconnect today, what would you like to say as a call to action for my listeners?
I strongly advise everyone to ask themselves, what do they really want? I spent so many years thinking that I wanted certain things, even though I realized later on that that was things that other people, other circumstances put in my head. And it was only when I really questioned all of that I could really slowly, because it's definitely not a fast, easy fix, I was able to understand what did I come here to do in this life, and how can I be beneficial to others through this discovery, through this journey. So all of the one size fits all of the kind of like unicorn status and then dominating the market. This is all toxic masculinity at play from a patriarchal situation where we are in right now, in a phase of humanity. The reality is that all of us are here for a specific reason. All of us have a different kind of like unique goal. And as long as you're going to be the best version of yourself every single day, nobody else can really copy you. Nobody else can really be a competitor, because there is space for everyone. That's the reality. I have written recently an article on my newsletter where I go back into the history of the concept of evolution. And it appears that everything that Darwin said is actually, what we think that Darwin said about evolution and the survival of the fittest is actually big bullshit, because he never said that. And actually his concepts don't even come from him. They come from another predecessor. And the real message there was that the fittest community cooperating in the best possible way was the one that survived the longest. So the real key concept is cooperation. It's not competition.
Well, that's a great takeaway. That applies in so many things: families, business, relationships, education. Yeah, that's a great way to end the show. So, Alessandro, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Adam.
And this has been an episode of the Vision with Execution show.